Today we have, the first item we're going to bring before the committee is Director Coit, Janet Coit's advice and consent hearing. And I'd like to ask Janet if you'd like to address the committee. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like my co-hug.
Thank you, Chair Sosnowski, Vice Chair Coit, and members of the committee. Good evening. It is an honor to be reappointed by Governor Raimondo, and I appreciate the relationship and the council and the oversight of this committee. You've been an important partner, and I think we've accomplished quite a lot together. Hello, Senate President.
Oh, you went directly.
Good. So as I mentioned, I sat down this afternoon and I wrote 12 pages of remarks, and I think, out of respect for your time, I will hit the highlights and give you a copy of this.
Whatever you'd like.
But really, it reflects the breadth and the scope of the Department of Environmental Management. Because really, when you sit down and try to think back on what we've accomplished together in the 8 years that I've been the director and about the challenges moving forward, and you look at our oversight over agriculture, oversight partnership, over agriculture, fisheries, the running of our fishing ports, clean air, clean water, site remediation, parks, fish and wildlife, and emergency response, and so on. It is really an awesome responsibility, and so many things that we do touch Rhode Islanders every single day, whether it's the air they breathe, whether it's the local clams they enjoy, whether it's the parks and bike paths that they visit. So I just want to acknowledge what a privilege it is to be the director of DEM, what an incredible responsibility it is, and spend a few minutes talking about some of the accomplishments and some of the challenges. And you can cut me off, because I love this stuff, and it's very consuming. So before I get into the issues that I wanted to hit on, I do want to just mention that I always say to my team that how we do our work is as important as what we do, and that customer service and trying to be transparent and listen to people, be responsive to people, have clear, predictable, and reliable regulations has been a hallmark of my time. When I started, I felt like it was a big area of opportunity to make DEM more customer friendly, and we are committed to continuous improvement. We are trying to update and modernize our systems, and we're trying to remember every day to learn from other people, to listen, to get back to people. And we have a lot of constraints, as you know, a huge workload. You've worked with us on so many issues over the years. So oftentimes it is very challenging as we see, for instance, around permitting development. When the economy improves and we have more permits in the pipeline, sometimes we're getting back to people and saying, it's going to be a few months before we get to your permit. That's a hard conversation to have, a really important conversation to have when people's business plan revolves around getting things done. So you've always been so supportive, Chair and this committee and the Senate President, but definitely I feel like we do the absolute best we can with the resources we have. And I want to just give a shout out. I've met many members of my team here, and I think we have a terrifically talented, committed, experienced team of people at DEM, and anything that I've done is because I get to work with those fine people. So, on customer service, I was just going to mention a few things. The only one I'll mention right now is that we did launch, I think one of the most successful launches, a new computer program in Rhode Island. We launched in 2018 a new 24/7 online hunting license. We were the last state to get our hunting licenses online. In the first 9 months of that program, we had over 73,000 customers. We issued over 125,000 licenses. Sales are up in every single category. And it was just very smooth and very well done. And it will allow us, I think, to better serve our hunting community and understand them better, and then possibly then be able to work with them. In many, many areas, we're trying to put records online, improve our systems, do our best to secure funding to modernize our IT so we can keep up with modern times and millennials and all that. So on to some accomplishments. So I'll go quickly, but I think water quality is one of the critical issues that we work on together, and we've made a lot of headway together. So I just wanted to comment that I'm thrilled that Governor Raimondo has reappointed me, but I happen to now be into my 9th year, so really I'm looking back over 8 years, and there's so much we could talk about, but I just want to commend the work that we've done together to try to eliminate cesspools. That's been really important to water quality, to groundwater quality, and we worked hard for many years, and without your leadership, we wouldn't have accomplished that. I was privileged to oversee some reopening of waters in Narragansett Bay that have been closed to shell fishing for many, many decades. And that is a result of strong federal and state laws and strong implementation of improving our water quality, and that benefits everyone. You and I have worked together with other members of the committee, and I would say without anyone being able to counter it, that you are the leader on agriculture, and that this committee has been the committee that has supported agriculture in Rhode Island and helped year by year to both improve and strengthen our laws to support agriculture, and recently with the concerns that you've had over the Food Safety Modernization Act and the Produce Safety Rule, really to try to temper what's going on in a way that supports farmers. And there's a lot that I could talk about that I think that we've accomplished. I'm particularly proud of the local Ag and Seafood Act grant program that's leveraged so many funds and helped launch so many businesses. But I think just important, and I had occasion while we were waiting for you to talk further to a couple of our amazing farmers in the room, but just as important to try to work and make sure that the work we do is done in a way that is practical and pragmatic. And I know you have very specific concerns about some things going on now, and we're committed to continue the ethic that I think we try to always follow, which is to work together and collaboratively with our agriculture community. We've also talked a lot about fisheries, and I think these are a challenging time. Last night, our Coastal Resources Management Council voted on a very difficult application for offshore wind, and there's many ways that DEM supports fisheries of all kinds, and I think that's extremely important. Both agriculture and fisheries are a very important part of our economy, and I think we're going to have to keep working really hard looking at the different challenges. It feels like we're at a crossroads, both with our farming community, where people are getting older, and looking at how we support young farmers, or whether people are there who have access and opportunity, and with our fishing community who have many challenges. So I think we've had a lot of successes, and it's very much on my mind as I look forward. Outdoor recreation, I think that's a fun part of being the DEM director, and the unbelievable array of places that we have for people to, I was at Lincoln Woods and found out, which I didn't even realize, that it is nationally known as a place where people come to boulder, and it's on every website, and because there's free access to the park, incredible opportunities around all sorts of these rocky formations. That's our first state park, but from opportunities like that to all the boat ramps and fishing access that we work on. We're about to start construction of a fishing pier at Rocky Point, and one of the things that I love working on, and the governor's made it a real priority, is just trying to encourage people to get outdoors and to enjoy these places that belong to them. They're one of the things that I think we've done really well, is create a network of parks, beaches, management areas, campgrounds, bike paths, and my vision would be that every single Rhode Islander enjoys those places and feels safe and comfortable in nature. And it's really important to their health. I'll talk to you further during probably the budget process about the Governor's Parks Initiative, but let me just say now that our parks are loved to death. We have over 9 million visits a year to our major parks and beaches, and that the Governor's worked hard with DEM to take a look at our needs, look at where we fall short, and to put together a plan to try to invest more resources. Part of that plan that's gotten the most attention is a bump up in some of our fees. I think that's merited. It was recommended in the report. If we can invest that money back into our state park system, it will be a way of making sure that the people who use these facilities help pay to take care of them. So that's a big initiative for us and something I'd like to work more on, and that I've talked with the chair about quite a bit over the years. I wanted to say thank you for your work supporting the green bonds. In the last 2 years, we've done, in the last 4 years, we've done 2 major bonds that have supported clean water investments, farmland protection, open space, brownfields remediation, recreation, resiliency, and the last bond passed by nearly 80% of the voters in Rhode Island. And we've seen over and over that urban populations are as or more supportive of these bonds, and I think that they demonstrate how much your constituents really care about clean air, clean water, and having open spaces and communities that are healthy and inviting. So I think that's a way that Rhode Island has successfully invested in environmental quality, and I know the governor intends to keep putting forward green bonds, and I hope we can work with you to shape those bonds so they align with your priorities. I just wanted to mention on the bonds that in the last 4 years under the governor's watch, we did create, with your support, the new Brownfields Grant Program, and that has been totally hit the bullseye when it comes to supporting cleaning up and remediating sites, putting them back to use, supporting economic investment and jobs. And so we've spent $10 million so far in a variety of projects that are now new schools, new housing developments, new businesses, and in a state like Rhode Island, where we have so many former industrial sites or lightly contaminated sites, that's been a really important program. I think something we can all be proud of. So, and I could go on and on. So I'm going to just hit on a few challenges and then be happy to take your questions. So I just wanted to mention that we have a couple issues that keep coming to the fore. One is emerging contaminants, something I'll talk more about with you. But there's a whole host of chemicals that have been used that more and more we're hearing from scientists cause health risks. And we're kind of learning about these and working to make sure that we both mitigate future risk and then do testing and look to clean up or protect people. So one of those they're called PFAS. So they're these perfluoroalkyl compounds that have been used for non-stick surfaces, and they've been used for firefighting foam, and they're causing really significant health impacts, and we've been testing, working with the health department. So it's an example of an area where I think we need to work together to understand better what to do to protect Rhode Islanders, to test and clean up, and communicate with people about what we may be learning about as we go. Plastics is another issue. The governor's task force just made its recommendations, but we now know that by 2050, by mass, there'll be more plastics in the ocean than fish. And we just completed a task force with a whole series of recommendations, from a plastic bag ban to others, to try to reduce use of single-use plastics upstream and encourage recycling and get them out of the environment. So I think that's an area where Rhode Island can be a real leader. The area, for us, the ocean state, an area where I think we want to be very cognizant of what we can do to lead by example in state government, and what we can do to work with industry and consumers to reduce plastics. Also, I just want to mention that the harmful algal blooms that we've seen in the Bay are something relatively new in terms of our experience, and that's another area where we need to do close monitoring and work together to see and understand what's going on in our waterways. And finally, I just want to end by talking about, we've made terrific headway at improving air quality. The air quality in Rhode Island, whether it's ozone pollution that is a problem for children with asthma and for vulnerable adults, whether it's other emissions from facilities in Rhode Island, the air is much cleaner now than it was when the Clean Air Act was enacted in 1970. But we still have a ways to go in terms of our work on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And you enacted, I think it was Senator Connolly's bill, the Resilient Rhode Island Act, and since that was enacted, I've been the chair of the Executive Climate Change Coordinating Council. And we've done some really great work. I think that legislation was really important. But it set targets that are challenging. I mean, we'll meet the earlier targets, but we have a lot of work to do together on addressing climate change, both in terms of emissions reduction and resiliency. I think we've done a very good job on some of the electric sector emissions, and we were one of the first states with the regional greenhouse gas initiative, and that's been very successful. We keep working at a regional level. I just want to mention that transportation is an area where we have to double down, where there's a lot we can't control in terms of a president that's going to back off on fuel efficiency standards, and we may even need to fight together because we as Rhode Island signed up for the California standards that the administration has just said they're going to not support. So on auto emissions, we did a fantastic job with the VW federal settlement money. We very quickly put that to use on replacing older diesel buses for RIPTA with clean zero-emission vehicles. And we're working to promote electric vehicles, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. And because of the fact that we're moving towards cleaner electric energy, we're seeing progress there, but we're seeing the transportation sector grow in terms of its contribution to emissions. So that's an area I think we need to focus very hard. Resiliency for Rhode Island, we're seeing already warmer bay, warmer air temperatures, sea level rise, already 10 inches by the Newport tide gauge, more intense storms. So that gets me back to water quality in terms of dealing with stormwater and outmoded infrastructure. And the governor has a plan, Resilient Rhody, and we put some bond money towards that, and we want to work really hard with not just DEM, but the public places that we manage, and then with all the communities to try to promote resiliency and be smarter about how we either retrofit or remove or construct new infrastructure. So I think that climate change is a huge focus, one that transcends DEM, but something we need to work on together. And I just wanted to mention again that while we promote clean energy, there is no free lunch. And so just as I've been hearing from, as you have, Chair, from the fishing industry with increasing urgency over the last few months about their concerns about offshore wind, we've also been talking about concerns about solar siting that's destroying forest areas that are important for our wildlife or for protecting our drinking water supply or for green corridors. So just the need to, as we promote clean energy, work really carefully to make sure that we're also supporting fisheries, supporting the biodiversity or wildlife goals that we have, and not just trading one set of problems for another. And I mentioned when I met with you and the Senate President that those energy issues have consumed more and more of DEM's time, and we're trying to both promote clean energy, but also make sure we do it responsibly. And I think that's another issue we'll be working on together. So let me end by saying that probably like all of you, I pinch myself a lot when I'm driving around Rhode Island because it's so beautiful. And as I drive across the bridges and look out over the bay, as I am in your district in the forest lands, out on the beaches, I think that we're really lucky to be in such an incredibly beautiful state, and that one of the responsibilities that I take to heart the most is making sure that we have these places so that our children and our grandchildren will be able to both enjoy the public spaces that we work to protect, that the fish and wildlife that are sustained by these places are healthy, and that the people in every community in Rhode Island has access to nature and the outdoors. And really, that's fundamentally the most important job of the DEM director. So, thank you for listening to me. You know me pretty well, some of you, and so the opportunity to keep working with you and keep leading the agency. I've made a lot of progress. I've also learned from some mistakes along the way, and we'll keep trying and working. And there's always, it's an interesting time to be working on environmental issues, and we're lucky we have a good team at DEM. So thank you.
Thank you. Committee, have any questions for Director Coit?
One thing, I appreciate all of the work that you and DEM do, and I greatly, in my short time, appreciated the opportunity to work with you. One thing I didn't hear you mention is the concern around environmental justice issues, and I'm wondering how you see your role in the DEM being able to lead on those issues, and if there's things that we could do to aid you in giving the tools that you need I would just like to hear a little bit about that.
Great, sure. Yeah, and that is, I'm glad that you raised that. That's something we just had a retreat and that we've talked about a lot. And you and I have talked about and gotten together even before you became a senator. So that's so environmental justice issues are very much on the mind of DEM, both when we look at environmental protection and when we look at local food and natural resources. So we've been talking about how we both better get out of our Providence headquarters or get out and get into communities to listen to people and to get out from our perspective and give people access to DEM, but also how we embed environmental justice into each of the programs. So whether it's farmers markets or teaching people how to fish, that we think about how we're reaching communities that don't necessarily speak English as a first language, have access to DEM. So it's something very much on our mind. It's something I think we can do much better at, and that's a lot of the conversations that we have when we're talking about our strategic plan and how do we, an agency that is very downsized compared to where we used to be, kind of learn new ways of providing access to people to the work that we do, and new ways of approaching challenges that might not come from the Clean Water Act or the Clean Air Act, but actually come from a confluence of factors that affect people in their community. So I would love to, we talk about it a lot and are cognizant often that we need to do a better job of that.
Thank you. President Ruggiero?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to come here and for the support of the director. I think she's done a great job you've been here 9 years?
This is my 9th year.
She's done a great job, especially in the area of customer representation. I think they've really improved dramatically, but they've done a whole bunch of other things since then, and I really enjoy working with the director. So I am here just to give my support to her today.
Thank you. Senator Rushmore?
Thank you, Director. Welcome. I think from the first time I met you, you haven't changed in your temperament. You have that brilliant state of mind, but there's like an innocence to you. This isn't flattery. You've got this childlike, just the way. Sometimes I come off that way, but I'm telling you just the way I see it. Sometimes I get myself in trouble with that. But you have there's a way that you are. You come to the hearings, you're here, you come regularly, we see you. You're very proactive. And there's this humility that you have on issues that we appreciate. It's talked about. People don't say negative things about you. So that's a big plus. And I'm confident that with you continuing in your role that you're going to address the issues that you've discussed. The regulations, the deregulatory study that's underway to streamline one set of regulations. I'm a big fan of that statewide. League of Cities and Towns on here today. I think I've given up a little autonomy in that respect to one code that everybody can follow on a host of different issues, waterways and septic systems and all. How are we doing with that? I know we'll find out this session, but how are we doing with that?
Well, we just, as you are aware, we just had to refile every single regulation, and that did take a lot of work. It took a lot of work and meant that we are actually behind on some other new regulations, but along the way, we're able to definitely improve, I think, some of our regulatory processes. In some cases, we're refiling what we're already doing, but we took the opportunity to try to improve. I think what you're talking, you know that we've been working with lean tools, trying to assess our processes and improve efficiency, eliminate waste. I think we've made tremendous headway. But I think your question may have been getting at a bit more some of the redundancy, where someone has to navigate DEM, and then they have to navigate CRMC, and then they've got to navigate the town of South Kingstown.
That's exactly
And there are areas, one of the regs that we're behind on is our new wetland regulation that will supplant one code, and so there'll be one code you won't be regulated by your town and then by the state. And I think in some other areas, with septic systems, for instance, there's still unrealized opportunities to do kind of a one-stop shopping or coordinate the local and state regulation. Tyler and Young just said the two things they worry most about are the weather and government. And I'm aware, we try to work with stakeholders in the business community to try to put ourselves in their shoes and realize that while we may just be thinking about stormwater mitigation, they're also navigating many other government processes. So I think that's a work in progress where we made really distinct headway in certain areas and other areas are barely touched. So that's an area of opportunity.
Thank you. I want to
Thank you.
touch on it. I know you're making a lot of progress. Thank you. Thank you.
Do any other senators have any comments at this time?
Madam Chair?
Senator Connell? do you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director, welcome.
Thank you.
I want to join in with the Senate President's observations that there was a time not very long ago when I think the public perception and perhaps even the culture at DEM was that it was difficult for businesses to work with, difficult for businesses to understand how DEM worked, and that there were those occasions, I think, when it was viewed as being perhaps even obstructionist and more punitive than remedial. And I think under your leadership that has changed dramatically. I do think that there's much more of a perception that the approach of DEM is now to be remedial and to be a partner in helping people meet the challenges of compliance as opposed to being punitive. So thank you for that. And I think that's also consistent with, I think, a principle that this committee believes in, which is that the old paradigm between what's good for the environment is bad for business, or what's good for the business is bad for the environment. I think that paradigm has changed and continues to change in Rhode Island, where there's a real belief that an understanding that what's good for the environment is good for business too, that they are partners. And I think your approach and your problem solving and your customer relations culture has done a lot to promote that, so thank you for that. Also, I think you know that this committee is very concerned about the future of farming in Rhode Island and the impact that FSMA can have on the future of Rhode Island farms. Rhode Island agriculture has been an important part of the economy of Rhode Island, the identity of Rhode Island, and there's a real need to continue that partnership with our farmers. FSMA has been is really an unfortunate federal law regulation because it really does take a one-size-fits-all approach to farming, and more than anybody else at this table, I know that one size does not fit all. And that's particularly true of agriculture in Ireland. And as you know, there's some history here. This committee sort of led the discussion that changed the regulatory direction from the Department of Health to DEM because obviously that's a much better fit for agriculture. We continue to work with our farmers in addressing how we're going to make FSMA work in Rhode Island. We appreciate your collaboration at this point, and really there's a need to continue that because without being melodramatic, it could be an historical turning point for farming in Rhode Island if we don't get it right. Same thing with fisheries. You said it very well that as new technology develop and serve one of our purposes for green energy, we need to understand how that impacts other industries that are important in Rhode Island, and fisheries obviously fit into that as well. And we need to continue working on figuring that out. Same thing with the solar placement in forested areas. OER has become a good partner in that with us as well. It's done a lot of work. There's been a lot of reach out along with DEM and OER in the communities on things like model ordinances, and that discussion has to continue without being, again, I don't mean to be dramatic, but we could be at a crossroads for that industry as well if we don't get it right. So I think all those things are important. I'm very glad you touched upon all of them. EC4, you're right, those are challenging standards that we set, but we need to be partners in meeting those challenges as opposed to kind of resigning ourselves if the challenges are too difficult. We can't go in that direction. And so while I agree with you that those are difficult benchmarks and thresholds to meet, and we need resources to meet them, and we need to figure out how we get those resources to meet those challenges. It's important that that discussion doesn't kind of get turned around a little bit at this point in time where those challenges are maybe they're a little bit beyond our reach. Maybe our reach exceeded our grasp. Our reach didn't exceed our grasp. We have the ability, the talent, the resources to get there, and we need to collaborate to continue to do that. So thank you for addressing that as well, and that's a priority. Perhaps on a smaller, but I'm also glad that you did address the issue of emerging contaminants because there are sites in Rhode Island that are beginning to identify those and struggle with them, and that are critical to our communities and how communities deal with them. So I appreciate hearing that DEM is cognizant of that and prepared to, again, be a partner in addressing those issues as well. For all of those reasons, it's been a privilege to work with you and with this committee on all those issues, and look forward to continuing those discussions and that collaboration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Conley. I just want to say a couple of things, and then we have some witnesses to speak for you. But it actually has been enjoyable to work with you. It really has been. I've been in this position for a while and worked with other directors. And I can remember when you first came on, and the morale wasn't. I work closely with DEM on a lot of issues, obviously being in agriculture, and the morale over at the department wasn't really that great at that time. And I have to say that your appreciation for your staff, everyone that works at DEM, has really made a big difference. And I think it has to be noted that has been part of your success. And the department has worked very smoothly because of your appreciation for the different talents and expertise of the folks in different departments. And I have to say that since you've been there, your support for fisheries has been outstanding. I know it's difficult to deal with a lot of the regulations that you have to deal with the fisheries, but serving in some commissions that I have over the years, your support for and willingness to dive right into difficult situations and work things out and be reasonable for the fishers in Rhode Island should be noted and is greatly appreciated. And your support for agriculture, where the farmers markets have just blossomed into over 40, 50 in the state of Rhode Island, and it's really helped to bridge that understanding with consumers to the farmers. And I greatly appreciate your continued support for agriculture. As Chairman Conley mentioned, FSMA has been, it's been a painful time. And not only for the older farmers, but also younger farmers in Rhode Island. This is going to be a very difficult time for them. And let's hope we can work together. And I know you've heard from the senators. This committee has been very supportive of agriculture on the FSMA issue. So I hope we can continue to have prosperous agriculture in Rhode Island. And I was glad to hear you say all the things you say. You're like speaking to the choir here with this group. But on the transportation issues, I really would like to work. I think that's something in Rhode Island that we haven't really totally focused on. With the smallest state in the country, we should have the best mass transit. We got the MBTA, we've got trains, we've got RIPTA, we've got all this stuff, and it's great. But it gets so close, but then it doesn't make the full connection. So I'd love to work with you on that as a person who rides the commuter rail as much as I can to avoid the traffic. But anyway, without further ado, we'll call on the witnesses. I just really want to say that you have been a conscientious and devoted leader of the department, and it's very much appreciated. Thank you. The first witness is Eugenia Marks.
really appreciate it. I am retired from 35 years of working in the Audubon Society until I worked with Janet for all those, and for many of those years. And first met Janet when she worked for the U.S. Senate and was counsel to the Senate Environment Committee in Washington. And I always found her very helpful, and I think that's a hallmark of her administration, that she is open, she has integrity, and so she makes things work. In addition to her comments about climate change and what the department has done, the fact that she has installed renewable energy in many of the department's facilities, I think, is a model so that everyone can see how that works. So thank you very much for letting me say a few words about my endorsement.
Thank you very much, Eugene. Michael, is it Michael Knipper?
Knipper, yes.
Knipper? Welcome.
Thank you. I don't have a chance, 13 pages, but... and Senator Connolly, you mentioned about 5 of the things that I was going to say anyway, but good evening.
He's good at that.
Yes. Good evening. I am really happy to be here tonight, particularly in support of the director. My name is Michael Knipper. I run real estate procurement for Citizens Bank. We built our large campus in Johnston, as many of you are aware of, which is where I came into connection with the DEM. But I led that project in the development of our 423,000 square foot campus with our over 3,000 employees. When I met with the director back in early 2016, one of the things I don't think many people realized of the project was that the site we chose was probably the most complex and difficult site you could possibly build one. And we only had 2 years to finish the project. And the primary risk element on this site was the environmental. There's a 4.5 acre landfill on the site. We had wetlands crossings. We had wetlands through the site. We had wetlands down where the highway ramp was going to go. So I had great fear, quite frankly, on the risk of that in going to meet with the director and DEM, because my experience in many states in the past had said this would be my longest pole in the tent and my most difficult pole in the tent. It was an entirely different experience. I will tell you that the first commitment I received was that they would assist us in any way possible meeting our schedule. And of course I didn't believe a word that was said. But when they started to walk me through how they use the lean processes, which I'm familiar with as a corporate person, when we were offered immediately that we will meet with you every week until we're going forward on schedule. When I sat in those first few meetings and they were ahead of my very highly paid consultants, it was quite interesting. So it was a really good experience. And from a corporation's perspective, it is critical, because if we were over schedule or we went past our schedule, it would cost us millions and millions of dollars. And to get through this process in the way we did. So, but a few things I do want to mention about the director, because I was very impressed, both with her and her team. I mean, first and foremost, for those who know her, all the efficiencies and the great scheduling work that she did for us, that was always tempered with she is an unbelievable advocate for the environment and protecting the land and protecting it for the people of Rhode Island. So there was never a conversation of, we could do this faster for you because of this, this, and this. It was always, we will do it efficiently, but we will enforce the laws and regulations consistently. And that, frankly, was the most important value add for them, because we had no time did we not understand exactly what the rules were that we needed to follow and go through. I've noticed she has some attributes that are really critical in the role of leadership, and one is she empowers her team. I mean, there was no, I could go through the entire chain through DEM that was working on it, and people felt empowered and they were excited to do the work. This lean effort was amazing, and it really helped her, you know, and helped them push things through in an efficient fashion. The meetings they did with us every week, I can't tell you the value of that, and frankly, it put our consultants on notice, because the consultants typically blame the DEM for what goes wrong, but when everybody was in a room together, there was no longer a blaming process in place. The director and her team were accessible throughout the project, which again is critical, so when we had issues, we could get to somebody right away. And again, I can't say enough about how much having the regulations enforced consistently. But in short, you know, I mean, this is a huge project for us. I would say we walked away, and I said this in a number of public forums, I believe the DEM has become an asset for the state, which is not something you can say in many places. I believe the state should market the DEM because from a business perspective, I mean, we are like most corporations today. We care about the environment. We're doing recycling programs. We care about our carbon emissions, and we do all that. But we need to build something big to have an organization and the government that we can work with closely, that enforces laws fairly, consistently, and efficiently is excellent for us. So we have great support for her, and it was a great experience. So I don't know if there's any questions, or you can take questions, or how you process that. So.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Kemper. Is there any comments or questions? And I'm sure the mayor of Johnston was very, very pleased to have citizens.
As happy as you can be, yes. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Collins? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm not going to ask for a gift. So thank you for allowing me to speak very briefly about the advice I was sent for Director Coit. So the first time I met Director Coit was room 212. It was before she had just been identified by the governor. We were talking about an issue in Little Compton, Tiverton area at the time, which took 5 or 6 years to address. And I'll say she ultimately addressed it to my satisfaction. No, just kidding. She ultimately addressed it through the process. We made certain there was a process in place, and she ultimately did that. Testament to her, I'll say, success of results. I think she is now the longest serving director on the cabinet for the governor. She is, I think, the only director that served 2 governors. So I'm not sure what that means, but I just figured to make up some conversation and say, I'll put that aside. We've had, and I know a couple, at least one constituent here from Little Compton, and she's come down to Little Compton a couple times. It's a long way from Providence, but it is God's country. If you ever get a chance to come to Little Compton, come to Little Compton. DEM has many pieces of land there. So 2 things I wanted to talk about. Senator Conley and Madam Chair, you talked about it with regards to the Food Safety Modernization Act, and many of us have written letters with regards to the potential impact it's going to have on farmers. We're not quite sure what that is necessarily, and how it might negatively impact that. Based on a meeting hearing we had a while back, we were up in the room 313. We heard from some folks that they may say, I'm out of here, I'm done. I'm just not going to do that, whatever that is. It was different for everybody. And while some have been doing this for a long time, some are older, but some are experienced. In the case of I think a gentleman will probably be speaking in a few minutes from Little Compton. He and his family, uncle, and have hundreds of acres in Little Compton. Hundreds. It goes back to probably the founding of Little Compton a long, long time ago. So they've been doing this for a long time. And for them to have a concern with regards to, maybe we might say thank you very much. Granted, some land is protected, so it's not, land's not going to go anywhere. I suspect there's some other land that they're going to say, we're going to sell this for development. And think about the challenges that'll face. With all that said, the director continues to hear, continues to listen. We need to now move forward with regards to the action of what that means to our farmers in the entire state, and figure out how to bring those couple things together. As the Senator said, with regards to what's good for the environment, what's good for business, we've got to figure out how to bring those 2 things together as it relates to the Food Safety Modernization Act. 2 other areas I wanted to talk about very briefly. Another area has to do with, I think, because the farmer from Little Compton will speak to this as well, maybe not, so I will. Has to do with the land that's been acquired by Fish and Wildlife. It needs to be used for fish and wildlife because that's where the money came from. So we understand and appreciate that. And the director, we've had conversations, and I even gave her some of my suggestions. We'll see where they go about how that can be, how to cohabitate those 2 things together. and they can work synergistically with each other. But that's another piece with regards to the farmland that we have in the state, how Fish and Wildlife is part of that. How do we have both of those two things come together? I think there's some real opportunities there. And like I said, she continues to hear, not listening to what I'm saying yet, but that's okay. She'll eventually listen now. So you're looking at it from the perspective of following the process. And at the end of the day, any director I've ever talked to, I said, just because I'm saying it should never be an exception you make. What you do today, if Joe, Sally, or Mary came tomorrow, I'd expect the same answer for them and the same thing to happen. We can't do one of us. They need to be consistent, so we need to figure out how to make these two things work for everybody. And the last piece, with regards to the lean effort. So a little bit of familiarity with lean processes, lean, and what lean can do for you. It's not a commercial, what lean can do for you. But what lean really can do for the organization, and I think some of the work this governor's looking to do with Director DBAs, and I read part of it, I read the whole thing, whether the director is a part of that efficiency effort of trying to find $10 million. The work that the director has done in DEM of leaning out processes at the end of the day, who does that affect? Businesses, it affects people. What does lean mean? Get rid of the waste, get rid of the pure waste. The planned waste, we do as much as possible because everything we do has some planned waste. And at the end of the day, how to figure out what's most efficient for the folks that you're dealing with every day. So I look forward to seeing what the committee chooses to move forward with, but I want to say that the director continues to hear, listen, and hopefully she'll act as I request. So thank you very much.
Don't we all?
Yes. I just like that said.
Thank you, Senator
Thank you
Palmer.
very much.
Okay, Jody King?
Here you go.
12 pages. Yeah, I almost got to be actually just as yours. My name is Jody King. I want to thank you all for being a part of this. Janet's a great friend. She's a great ally. I'm a commercial fisherman. I'm a commercial shell fisherman. I'm a quahogger. I like to call myself a commercial wild harvest bivalve extractor. I've been doing what I do for a living, and this will tell you how long. I just turned 58 last week, and I kind of realized I've been doing what I've been doing for more than 50 years. This is how I cut my teeth at Rocky Point with my 3 baby brothers, my mom and my dad, at Rocky Beach. If I had ever known that this was going to lead to a career, I would have shot myself then. It's been the greatest career that I could have ever chosen for myself. If I cut myself, I bleed salt water. I bleed Narragansett Bay. I kid you not. I have spent over 50 years playing in Narragansett Bay. You have a clam in front of you. Does anyone here at this table know what 384 stands for besides these 2 3? I heard you.
Miles of shoreline.
That's how many miles of shoreline that this young lady needs to protect, preserve, and promote. Rhode Island is how big? 45 minutes long. It is 35 minutes wide, and we have 384 miles of coastline. If we took off the west coast, Texas and Florida, we'd actually be 13th in the country for the amount of coastline that we have. It's her job to protect those 384 miles of coastline. Does she have the staff? I'm going to say no, but she does it anyways. And that staff that she has, some of them are here, does it with a smile every single day. I get to see Chief Hoxie's enforcement team out on the water on a regular basis. I am never so proud to see them come out and jump on my boat and say, you got this, you got this, you got that. Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Mr. King. You have a great day. And I give him the same reply. You not only have 384 miles of coastline, but you're talking to a forestry major. When I was in school, it was over 40% forested land in Rhode Island. I don't think we have 40% now. She needs to protect that. She needs to take care of that. It's a huge job. New Hampshire has, how many miles of coastline? Oh God, 12. They have more enforcement people on 12 miles of coastline than we have ever had going back 20 years, and that's, enforcement was a little bit bigger than we had then. And they do a great job. That's a lot of coastline for those men and women to cover. I was standing at my desk, and my beautiful wife over there, she'll chuckle because I stand at my desk. And this fell out from my desk. And it's a card I received, and I was told not to say how long ago. But this card is over 20 years old. This is Janet's business card that I received over 20 years ago when she shook my hand and said, whatever you need, you just call. I've been calling for 20 plus years. My wife will tell you, I'm only allowed to receive only a few calls early in the morning, especially from women. Janet is one of those calls I am allowed to accept. I've had a mantra that since I was 14 or 15 years old, and I think Janet lives my mantra. My mantra for a lot of years: good, better, best. Never let it rest until good is better and better is best. I don't think Janet knows that she's been preaching and doing all those things that I've been so proud of my entire life. She's become a great ally, a great working friend, and a great friend to not just me, but to, you talk to almost any fisherman, they're going to give you the same spiel I'm giving you. Thank God she's here. I only have 3 women in my life that control everything that I do. One of them is not my wife. Mother Nature. She's my ultimate controller. She controls everything that I do on the water. This young lady here is the other controller. She controls everything regulatory that I do. And the other one is our esteemed governor. So I have 3 females in my life that control everything I do besides my wife. And I'm proud to have those 3 females on my side. It's a great honor and a privilege to be able to pick up my phone and say, I'm going to call a friend. And that's what Janet has been to me for well over 20 years. And if she's like that with me, she's like that with everyone. I forget who said her demeanor is always the same. And it's been like that for over 20 plus years. I am so proud and honored to sit here again, because this is the second time I've sat here for Janet at her Senate hearing. And it was 9 years ago I sat here and did the same thing. I'm more proud now, knowing what she's done for the environment in Rhode Island, than I was then, to have her as my leader and my friend, taking care of my job. She definitely takes care of everything I do. I walk to my boat in the morning. I am controlled by everything beautiful that she does at her job. She does a wonderful job. Her staff, you've heard it time and time again, what a great cohesive group they are. I have no fear to call anyone on her staff and ask them any questions, and they will, if they can't give me the answer right then and there, I'll get it for you, Jody. And that's how that's why I love having Janet at her job. She's made that department a pleasure to work with. I walked away from fisheries a number of years ago because of bad things going on in that department. And she's made me walk back in and be more proud of what I do for a living and what she does for a living and what she does for all of us. every single day. She starts her job, and I know because I get the phone calls, 5:30 in the morning. And I get the phone calls at night, at 9 o'clock at night when she's still at work. I know how hard she works. I hope you all realize she loves her job. And it's one of those things that my dad taught me. If you love your job, and I love mine, it's almost like not going to work. I get paid to go to the gym every day. She gets paid to take care of the environment in Rhode Island, and she does an outstanding job. I am so proud to sit here before you and tell you, keep her on for another 9, 10, 15, 20 years, because she'll continue doing what she's doing now for as long as she lives, and as long as you keep her at her job. So thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much, Janet, for being my friend, for being my co-worker, and for taking care of what I enjoy the most, and that's Narragansett Bay. We've got a big chunk of Rhode Island sitting in the water. Let's take care of it the way Janet's been taking care of it for me. Thank you. Any questions?
I don't think there's any doubt that we support the director.
I'm fine.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Tyler Young?
Hello, everybody. How are you? Chairman, members of the committee, it's good to see you again. I bring my show and tell today. Anyways, I was going to bring Dave Cotter today, but he's sick, and he just wanted to say thank you all for what you guys have been doing for us, and the procedures in getting, you know, the DOH out of the scene, pretty much for production part of agriculture. We still have some work to do. I'd like to say that Senator Palmer said, you know, and some of these other folks have said about the FISMA, it's a burden. Now, how you handle the burden, you know, there was a law that was created, and we look at the law and say, maybe it was pretty good that did that, for good reasons, but how you promulgate the rule, and how you put the regulations on you, and how they change, we in agriculture don't know which way it's going to commence. Right now, they don't know what's going on with water. So it's just that it's just constantly changing. We in agriculture have to kind of adapt as we go. We just don't want to adapt. So it's kind of a scary situation for a lot of growers. A lot of growers are very nervous. We are at a point in agriculture right now that it is an issue. We have different generations that are possibly going to come in. My girls, you know, we've got a lot of women. I've got a lot of women. I have old daughters and a wife. So, but they have really no interest in it right now because of all the issues we have with rules and regulations and weather. There's just a lot of things that are coming down. Like I told Janet, you know, what are our two biggest issues? Weather and government. And you know, just it's something that we have to work with. I'm on a committee, you know, and Senator Sanowski's on that committee too. And we've got other growers on the committee working with Ken Ayers. We just want to try to make it as less a burden as we can on the growers. Make it very simple, straightforward, and that's what we want. Another thing that Senator Palmer suggested or commented on was the land that some of the state owns. An example down in Tiverton, Sapawa was a farm my grandfather farmed, my uncle farmed, I farmed, and the state had bought it, I think, in the early 80s. And what they did was, I guess, with federal funds that went towards the purchasing of it, and they allowed us to use it for all these years. And all of a sudden, last 3 years, I think it was the third year, they just changed it and said, you guys can't use it anymore. We're going to, you know, put it aside for the wild animals and the hunters. And we said, can we share it? And that's when I talked to Senator Palmer about it and said, can we get some help? Let us use it. Work with a director. She knows about it. And we met with Kathy Sparks as well. So we want to see those type of things work because land is precious. We don't want to see a loss to things like that. I think we can share it. I know there's a lot of land the state does own, and we should be able to farm it. A lot of growers, the young growers are trying to get into it. So that's what I have to say, and I'm glad to be here. Say hello to you guys. They're good people.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you for being here, thank you for all your work. Any questions or comments from Tyler?
One thing I'd really like to see is that we, Farm Bureau, wrote a letter to finally support a letter that the director wrote, Dr. Alexander Scott, the FDA. We want to try to see exempt foods taken out of the federal law. We have Senator Reed. He said that changing the regulations is much easier than changing the law. So we could take those exempt foods out of the law with your help, the Senate's help. I think that'd be a great step. And because you never heard from the FDA, right? No. So they didn't respond to our letter. The two directors letter.
Right, they did, and we are very grateful for.
So we appreciate it particularly there. And
Dr. Scott for writing that, but we're here to help
Yep.
any way we can.
But Ken Ayers has been working with us, and we work well with Ken. We gotta have to kind of tweak him once in a while.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just once in a while, just once in a while.
Yeah, come down and visit our farm, have a little conference, so.
Thanks,
Right, great job.
thank you very much. Bill Stamp III. Welcome.
Should I sit here?
Yes, please.
Okay. Madam Chairman, Madam Director, members of the committee, my name is Bill Stamp. My family's been involved in farming in the state for quite a few years, and actually have been involved with many of the directors of DEM in the past 40 years. The one I can remember in my lifetime was first Bob Benedict. Okay, and I can't say that all those years of our work with various directors, starting with Bob, were ones that were admirable or peaceful, because the environment sometimes and its concerns can be a conflict with some people who use the land resource to provide a living. And when I look around the state, and that's not to criticize you, Jen, DEM certainly has a position to oversee, to look at some of the things that are involved to keep our pristine environment as we have it. But when I look at it as a farmer, I go up and down Route 2 or I go to Little Compton and I see landowners that have dedicated themselves to keeping their land resource open and doing things productively with them also in business to give us a home and opportunities here within the state. And I'm glad to see there's been change and I'm still here. Because with what my family has gone through with land as a resource over the past 30 or 40 years, it's been very difficult to stay in farming, but I'm still here. There are challenges that face us in the future, and I hope to be part of those to create solutions for the future. And I've been very blessed with my best crop being kids, 8 of them. I hope and pray that someone can go back here to the state of Rhode Island and farm, as many people in this state that have children want to see them come back here and have families and prosperity here. And that's what has to be imbibed in all this that goes forward with the director, with this committee, with everyone in this room. We have to create an environment that's holistic and realistic and make it so that we can have children come back to our community to work, to live, and to prosper and to enjoy it. And I hope and pray that that can continue. And I've seen some changes for the better, as directors have gone on, in the understanding of how we have to work together as individuals, as property owners, as employers, as employees, as policemen, as firemen, as all the other people that work within our network, and farmers especially. I'm partial to them, because I am one, and I'd like to see more come into the future to maintain what we have in the state and make it a better place to be for everyone. So with that, I'm here supporting Director Coit. It's a difficulty, her position. I'm kind of advocating Ken. And in all the other states of the Union, there's a division of agriculture that's an advocacy for us in agriculture. And the people that founded this country saw the importance of having that division, because they knew that using our resources are what it's going to provide for everyone. using them as stewards. So there's a little bit of friction there, Janet, and you understand that, more so than some of your predecessors, okay? But with that friction, we have to try to find a commonality going forward as stewards and work together and keep the closeness of communication with us in creating prosperity for everyone going forward. So I don't want to be that long. I appreciate your time, and thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, this next one. Christine Cabrera. Welcome.
Hi. I'm Christina Cabrera from Uruguay. Came to this country 20 years ago. Adopted by the Coit Wampanoag tribe of Wampanoag Nation. I'm speaking as the Environmental Director of Indian Affairs for the Coit Wampanoag Land Trust. And I'm looking around this room and I'm concerned about what I hear. I'm concerned about the makeup of the room and I'm concerned about the testimonies, except for one question about racial and environmental justice for Senator Don Ewer. I don't see our communities reflected here. Low income, people of color, Black, Indigenous. Janet, we've been together and I'm doing racism trainings that we brought to the state of Rhode Island. We're happy that some government officials have taken those trainings and we encourage people to continue, but they need to be applied immediately because there is no time for our communities. We cannot have an LNG facility, a liquefied natural gas facility in the state of Rhode Island. We cannot clean brownfields and then turn around and throw toxic in the west, in Washington Park, in South Side, and all the communities that are never at the table, that don't have a voice. It is concerning that the greatest, what I'm hearing is the greatest achievements have been in cleaner air quality. When I used to work in the Environmental Justice League of Rhode Island, we did air quality monitoring controls, together with RIDO, the Department of Health. The Washington Park with Providence is the highest hotspot asthma area, where children are constantly going to the emergency room for asthma. I walk those neighborhoods. I am in those neighborhoods. I don't see the parks. I don't see the recreation. I don't see the beautiful Rhode Island that everybody sees and say, where are people living? Because if you go there, you can't even stand the smell. I stood there in Washington Park neighborhood for 2 hours supporting some of the neighbors. I went sick. I went home sick. Next time I went, I brought gas masks with me and shared them with others because you cannot stand the environment that you have to breathe in there. So if we're not working to improve the lives of those who are the lowest income communities, or people of color, the ones that are struggling, and we pat ourselves in the back for all the nice beaches, which are very good and very important, and all the recreation parks, which are very good and important, we're missing the point that we're all in the same boat, and we cannot forget what half of our community. So, in this light, the No LNG campaign, LNG, we all know, liquefied natural gas plant from National Grid, has written a statement, and they have asked me to come today because there were many, many people who really wanted to come today, but due to work, families, and other complications, they aren't able to be here. So they sent this statement via email and writing, and they asked me to read it out loud. I went through, this statement mentions the process that happened for the approval of this liquefied natural gas plant. I testified in those hearings. They were horrific. If that undoing racism training that we went through, and I was co-trainer and helping the trainers from PISA, People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, the hearings were the total opposite of those trainings. I was sick to my stomach of having to go through those kinds of hearings from DEM, led by DEM. And so here is a little bit of the community's voice in this testimony. The community, frontline communities of color, people of color, indigenous communities, black communities, low-income communities are opposed to the reappointment of Janet Coit. And this is your testimony opposed to the reappointment of Janet Coit. Janet Coit's actions and decisions around National Grid's application for the Ryden Land Department's environmental management permit, the Ryden permits required to build a liquefied natural gas LNG plant on Allen's Avenue demonstrates either an inability or an unwillingness to fulfill her responsibilities to Rhode Island's environment and inhabitants. The construction and operation of the LNG facility poses grave risks to the natural and human environment, including risks to human and infrastructure safety through gas leaks and explosions, risks to human health through the disturbance of industrially polluted soil, risks to water and infrastructure due to the facility's proximity to a flood zone, and the climate risks posed to the human and natural environment through the facilitation of extracting, exporting, and burning fossil fuels. These risks were detailed and attested during the permitting process by experts and members of the community, despite barriers to community participation. And there were such barriers because at one of the hearings I was not allowed to go in because I had a laptop with me. Members of the community had to demand a public involvement plan, PIP, in order to have their concerns acknowledged by RIDEM. Once that PIP was in place, RIDEM continued to provide barriers to community participation by holding 2 out of 3 of the required community meetings in locations with a record of hostility and risk for residents of color. One, the Providence Public Safety Complex, which houses the Providence Police Department, whose history of racial and economic discrimination is sufficiently well documented to have necessitated the Providence Community Police Relations Act and the Police External Review Board. And or location remote from the neighborhoods nearest to the proposed LNG facility site and with limited or costly parking, which was the Veterans Memorial Auditorium, a 20-minute drive from South Providence or Washington Park, the neighborhoods which are closest to the proposed facility. RIDEM, with Director Coit at its head, defended itself and the community in order to proceed with decisions that damaged the community. And while community members, despite these barriers, presented and supported their objections and lack of consent to the facility, RIDEM ignored these objectives and approved both the short-term response action plan and the water quality certification that allowed construction to proceed. Director Coit failed to exercise the opportunity to safeguard Rhode Islanders, including some of the state's most vulnerable residents, and was willing to treat a working-class community of color already living in toxic conditions as a sacrifice zone for a polluting industry. Further, both the state of Rhode Island and the city of Providence have committed to drastic reductions in fossil fuel emissions in order to mitigate the effects of climate change, which poses unique threats to Rhode Island's many coastal ecosystems and communities through the sea level rise and storm surge, as well as high food and water insecurity and infrastructure failure that will affect low-income communities of color first and worst. But RIDEM's decisions, with Director Coit at the head, have enabled an increase in climate warming emissions through the facilitation of the processing and sale of natural gas, as well as the energy costs of operating the facility itself. At the time at which the permits were issued, the LNG facility was projected to cost $180 million to build, a cost that would be passed on to ratepayers. Director Coit's short-sighted approach to leadership and her narrow interpretation of the charge of writing have put Rhode Island residents, Rhode Island infrastructure, and the Rhode Island economy at unnecessary risk, and her appointment should not be renewed.
Thank you, Christina, and we all, the whole committee does have a copy of the letter as well. Are there any questions for Christina? Thank you very much. The next witness is Meg Kerr.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Meg Kerr. I'm the Policy Director at the Audubon Society of Rhode Island. You heard from the real Policy Director of the Audubon Society when you heard from Eugenia Marks. She's been at the Audubon Society for a long, long time. I've now been here for 3 years. So on behalf of the Audubon Society, you know that we really strongly support Janet as the EM Director. I also just wanted to mention that I've been working in environmental issues here in Rhode Island for about 30 years, working for a whole lot of different organizations, and I can second the comments that have already been made about the parade of DEM directors that we've seen over time and how Janet really does stand up above the rest. She's a problem solver, she's collaborative, she doesn't, she works, and as I said, I've worked in so many different organizations, and she always has been accessible to me no matter what organization I've been representing, and that's a wonderful thing. I just wanted to mention a couple of examples and then, a big challenge that I see ahead. We've been doing a lot of work recently on stormwater, green infrastructure. We did a training workshop at Roger Williams Park several months ago, and a bunch of the folks there raised some issues with some challenges they were having with DEM around permitting and stormwater. I got in touch with Janet, and within like 3 weeks, we were able to meet and talk through some of those problems that people were having. And I think that's just a good example of how, when there's problems on her team, she's there to work with you to try to fix them. We will be working, I think, with her a lot in the future. Senator Valverde and I have been working on a bill to look at woodlands in the state, the issue that's becoming really apparent as it's always been there, but the solar siting is making the potential loss of woodlands really apparent to us, so I look forward to working with you on that issue. I know Janet is interested in working with Audubon and all the rest of the stakeholders on that issue as well. In the years that I've been doing environmental work, we've seen the slow eroding of funding for DEM. I know that's something that you guys think about and work on all the time. And this is not a funding hearing for DEM, but I think it's another example of Janet's leadership. As the funding has been decreased, as new responsibilities have come her way, Senator Connolly and I worked on the Resilient Rhode Island Act, and that put a lot of additional responsibility at DEM. Janet's been the chair of the EC4, and she's taken on these responsibilities, and I think done a really good job moving us forward. So thanks for the chance to say a few remarks.
Thank you very much for being here.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Okay, is Sheila already here? From the Nature Conservancy? I don't see Sheila here. I guess she's already here. Okay, that concludes our witness list. Senator Coit?
Thank you. Well, the programs overseen by the department are so numerous, and we've heard about it from your testimony and many others, and so diverse yet so critical, it would seem almost impossible for one person to successfully manage them all. Somehow, Director Coit, you're able to do that. And the director has been wonderful to work with on many legislative initiatives. She's been responsive, accessible to members of this body, and clearly to the public. And with that, Madam Chair, I move that the Senate Committee on Environment and Agriculture recommend that the full Senate grant advice and consent to my constituent, Director Janet Coit, continue as Director of the Department of Environmental Management.
Thank you, Senator Coit. Is there a second?
Second that.
There is a second by Senator Thomas, Senator Archibald, Senator Goya, President Ruggiero, Senator Rogers. We will have a roll call vote. Mr. Clerk?
Roll call. President Ruggiero.
Aye.
Senator Archibald.
Aye.
Senator Condon.
Aye.
Senator Coit.
Aye.
Senator Boyer.
Aye.
Chair Sosnowski.
Yes?
Senator Rogers.
Aye.
Senator Valverde.
Aye.
8 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. The motion carries.
Very good. Congratulations, Director Coit. We will recommend that the full Senate grant your advice and consent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.